Hi, welcome to our chat about Medicare today. I'm Dee Dee Jones with Innovative Financial, and you're here to learn about how much is Medicare going to cost you. Medicare is way complicated. We get it in our heads that when we retire, Medicare is really a great deal for us. And for some people, it is a good deal. But for others, there are surcharges and IRMA adjustments and all these complications to the different pieces that can significantly affect how much you pay each month for your Medicare coverage. I run into this all the time with folks, and we walk them through, but it's still surprising. So worked with a person who was in a small company. They had less than 20 lives. And the rule there is when you hit 65, you must shift to Medicare. In a situation like that, we'd say drop the company insurance because then it's just a really expensive supplemental coverage because you're going to be on Medicare. So that's item number one. You have to find out if you have to go on Medicare or not. Is it a requirement? Depending on where you get your insurance currently, you may or may not need to do that. But that isn't related to cost today. So we're going to set that aside for another day. But this person was fairly well compensated, making well over $300,000 a year. And even though we'd walked through how all these costs were going to come together, he's like, oh my gosh, I am paying over $10,000 a year for this stuff. And he didn't use the word stuff. And it's like, I know. What do you mean you know? It's like, well, let's walk through it again. And that's what I want to do with you today is walk through those different elements. So in traditional Medicare, there's three main components. There's Part A, which most people think of as the hospital component. That, if you've worked and paid into Medicare for 40 quarters or 10 years, that part's free. And that's the part that I guess as human beings, we love that word free. That sticks in our heads. So that's not the big piece, but you'll see that on the card, Medicare Part A. And then there's a Part B. That's where we start to see some changes. And today I'm going to share some data with you. Yay! No, point the other way. Anyway, so on this little spreadsheet here, your monthly Part B premium is going to depend on your modified adjusted gross income from the tax return 2 years ago. So the fees that someone is paying in 2020 were based on their tax return for the year 2018. So there's a bit of a delay, and these are readjusted every 2 years. So with that said, you can find yourself in this. Individuals making less than $87,000 modified adjusted gross income, talk to your accountant or call me separately. We can look on your tax return and figure out what that is for you. Anybody individually filing under $87,000, their monthly Part B premium will be $144 per month. Married couples under $174,000 in that income are $144.60 per person per month. So that's the baseline cost. But if you look at this, you can see that as the income goes up, the amount you pay per person goes up fairly quickly. So if you're a very high earner, over $500,000 for an individual or over $750,000 for a couple, your monthly cost for Part B is $491.60 per month, or over triple what the base rate is. And so for people who've kind of chugged through their lives thinking, oh, once I get on Medicare, it's going to be a great, great deal. It isn't going to feel like the great deal. It's probably still less than on the open market. But that's what the cost is. Now, that is not the only adjustment we have to make. So the second adjustment is on Part D, the drug part of this. And now, remember, Medicare has multiple parts, A being the hospital, B being the doctors, the 80-20, where Medicare pays 80% of the covered costs and you're responsible for the 20. We just reviewed the cost for that. And then finally, there's the drug coverage. You've heard the donut holes, all those different coverages. When it comes to Part D, you need to go out and choose which coverage you want. And there's varying costs of coverages from $0 all the way up to over $100 a month. Then on top of that, there may be a surcharge. And so again, that's going to be based on whatever your income rate is. I get singles less than 87,000 don't have a surcharge. Marrieds less than 174,000, again, no surcharge. But that surcharge can be as high as $76.40 per month for the very, very high earners. Again, you can see on this little chart where you fall, but that's going to affect how much you pay each month. It is what it is. I mean, one can make judgment around that, whether or not we paid in, etc., but we can manage around it. Now, if you find that your tax return 2 years ago is very different than what you are now, where you are now, there are opportunities to request a reassessment of those surcharges and the IRMA adjustment. Those can be death of a spouse, loss of income, loss of an income producing property, retirement, and a few things along those lines. Now, there's only 8 specified life events that you can use, but you can apply for those exceptions. And oftentimes, it's just barely over 50-50 in my experience, but they will make adjustments. And over time, those adjustments, the surcharges, if your income has changed permanently, those surcharges will time themselves out because every 2 years, they look at your tax return and adjust your rates. So for folks just getting into Medicare, it's good to know how the timing works and if you can control income or if you need to request some adjustments on those surcharges. For people who are a few years ahead of this, not quite retired yet, it's terrific to know how is this going to affect you? How much do I need to plan for to pay for Medicare? Now, remember, Medicare doesn't cover all your costs. And again, that's a topic for another day, what is and isn't covered. Put a pin in that. We'll come back to it another day. But today, understanding what it's going to cost you per year. Are there ways to adjust your income each year? And there can be ways of doing that to keep that surcharge down a little bit. As well as folks who are well into their Medicare experience, what kind of adjustments can they make to control their costs? So kind of complicated topic today. I didn't dive in really, really deep, but it all comes down to what is your modified adjusted gross income, because that then can have an effect on how much you pay monthly. So if you're not paying any surcharges, you're paying the $144 per month plus whatever you choose on Medicare Part D. If you're very, very high income, your costs are approaching $800 per month per person. So there's a huge range from $160 to over $800. All depends on how much money you earn. So it's an interesting progressive structure. Again, no judgment. It's how it's been set up, but that's what we are working with. It's important for me to share with you what those costs are so that you can be better prepared as you transition into a Medicare participant. As always, we love to hear your comments and questions here live at Innovative Financial, live at noon every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A reminder, this Friday, we'll be talking with a mortgage broker to find out what's going on in the mortgage world in this crazy time, and more generally, what do we need to know about mortgages? Thank you for joining me today. We will see you soon. Have a good Monday.